All right. Chapter 4. Department of Defense Weapons and System Acquisition Reform Product and Support Assessment, November 2009. Chapter 4. Strategy for Implementing Lifecycle Product Support. The Product Support Business Model, PSMB, or PSBM. Product support business model introduced in chapter 3 captures the overarching strategy of the lifecycle product support. The chapter introduces the underlying strategic recommendation of the product support business model, the industrial integration strategy, and the supply chain operational strategy. The recommendation enables the project support business model of the strategy, beginning with describe the framework or need for the preparation, the product support, improvement of the industrial integration, speak to the opportunity synergy from the cooperative organic industrial organic commercial industrial base. The supply chain operational strategy provides with the tools for the common language to measure the benchmark, improving the performance and progress of the relationship. Industrial integration strategy recommendation aligning the expert and in collaboration between the government and industrial that produces the best value of the pattern practices. Independence between the government and industry is the fact of production product of the support. The U.S. defense industry certainly not without its flaws and limitations yet compared to some of the other country is certainly the most impressive and inviolable. The United States industrial base has been the source of American strategic advantage in the past. There's even every reason to think that the enlightened policy behavior on the part of the federal government and can continue the source of enduring the advantage of the future. To be ensured the United States has the strong initiative defense industry in the nation, which certainly requires the dedicated decades ahead of the federal government will need to develop more consistent, thoughtful, long-term, effective policies toward the defensive industrial base. Barry Watts, the U.S. Defensive Industrial Base, past, present, and future, 2008. Is unavoidable that the effective product of the support requirements of contribution for both the public and private sectors. They established the previous chapter. The government is fully responsible for accounting for the product of the support delivering it to the warfighter. Often, the product of the support must be performed by the government, particularly when the military forward deployed environment. Further, is a huge, long-standing investment in the organic support capabilities, particularly when the Department of Defense inventory control, distribution, maintenance, and depots. This should be effectively and efficiently employed carefully. The organic base does not as much, but thoroughly due to all the DOD product support worker in American industry, or one poetically in the words of President Franklin Roosevelt, the greatest arsenal of democracy and the source of the innovation with the product capacity for the military force. More than 60 years after World War II, when the standing commercial industry still seen today formed, the Department of Defense has yet fully leveraged its knowledge and skills and capability of the defense industrial base through considered deliberate integration strategy. Emerging product support best practices have defined to provide the maintenance of the depot over the course of the past decade, provided with a congent lesson on how to approach the industrial integration. The best practices are not specific into the depot level maintenance. They span across all components of the supply chain and can be generalized across the breadth of the country. Support activities. The full life cycle of the weapon system, commonly referred to as beyond the maintenance and reviewed as the thorough life support in the United Kingdom. These base practices describe an approach to extend the successful partnership beyond the department level of maintenance activity, catalyze invitation for both government and industry to expand the scope of the pattern from the narrow statute defined the maintenance-based approach to a broader, fully integrated approach for the product of the support spectrum. Much remains to be done while progress has been made in terms of moving from the arm's length to contracting. Much more room to remain and to achieve partnership for outcomes. Future product support is not public or private, instead based on relationship, but fully using expertise and capabilities of both the parties. Create the partnership approach, which is less adversarial in style, based on the mutual understanding of the motivation and interests of each of the party line, acknowledgement and managing the arenas of divergence and attention, as well as willingness to share the information with the spirit, openness, and transparency at all levels. Congress and various administrative have debated with many of the determined whether we should perform the department of work where it should be performed, because central is the debate into its interplay with the various forms of the private sector, organic facility collaboration, depot maintenance, and Title 10 provisions for one and limited private sector workflow load of the 50% of the available funding in the official years required with the government to maintain the certain of the capabilities of military deposits that require the public-private competition for the certain world. The public-private partnerships concept of the proven government operation provides a cooperative atmosphere for the resolving the debate highlights of the path of developing a framework for the implementing forward-looking industrial integration strategy. Public and private partnerships that are specific form of the industrial integration are proven to enhance the product support. Documented results include better parts available, reducing parts costs, and reducing the repair time, the reduced back orders, reduce the depot support costs. Public-provided partnerships have stimulated the private sector investment in the facilities, equipment, and improved the facility utilization, reducing the cost of the ownership, and promoted more efficiency business of process. The public-private partnership capitalized on what each of the partner does best, and sharing the best of the practices between the industry and the government open the door to innovating the inorganic base. The values based in the partnership approach to the product support across the life cycle is proven. While the success factors at the heart of the partnership serve to provide with an objective, the frameworks to successful working relationships are characterized by the soft factors such as the teamwork and the trust and the honesty. When the department and its industry display these the behaviors, they are more likely to develop a common understanding of the tasks that progress the meeting, giving the early warning of the problems. This approach to the innovation lies the business effort in itself. The partnership approach, which is less adversely in style, based on the mutual understanding of where the motivation and interest of each of the party lie, acknowledging the managing of the area, the divergence, the intention, of the willingness to share information, to a spirit, openness, transparency at all levels. The implementation of the next generation industrial integration strategy requires work captured in three specific keys. Task. One, support capture the broad set of the baseline data to include the type and structure, then characterize the partnership agreements, to establish policy training, the expanding partnership beyond the maintenance and delivering the standardship across the services, promoting proactive establishment, single source resource capability, propose modifications to Title 10 to enable the maximum implementation of industrial integration. One, support the capture of the broad set of the baseline in data, including the type of the size, structure, characteristics of the partnership agreement. The department needs to establish more than comprehensive partnership data between to assess the decision, but the better ones in the future. They emphasize that it should be the major defense acquisition programs, or MDAP, for each of the partnership. The facts like the partnership correlations will successfully characterize the workforce load and the time frame, performance incentives and awards fees, the term rationality gain share with it should be the caption project structure should be correlated with the key success factors. While debating still continues on the proper business and the structure of the partnership, whether it is direct and sale team with the work share with the best practices that transcend with the various flavors of the partnering and generally common access for the portfolio. Figure 14 details the successive factors of the good patterning. First documented with government account of the office in 2003. The performance support assessment task used in the same of the framework in the 2009 and to test the contemporary understanding of the good partnering, which rich foundation over 350 partnerships to date in the capture and the characterization, partnering the best practice common across the portfolio as possible. The 2007 Department of Defense report, public-private partnership, the Department of level of maintenance through the end of the official year of 2006 details cumulative impact of the 348 partnerships executed at the same time, creating the sustaining almost 5,000 government jobs, 3.7 billion in total revenue, 502 million in private sector investments, improved product support and performance business practices updated with the acknowledging cost advance and increased faculty utilization. Input on the partnerships were sought out from both the industry and the government sources, the depot commanders at the annual peer-to-peer meetings, industry representative of the Aerospace Industry Association, industry representative of the National Defense of Industry Association, and the entire team working as the Joint Strike Fighters, including both industry and government members. All right, there's government. The top five that I just listed have a successful characteristics are long-term relationship, commitment, sharp partnership vision, objective, the right matrix, the incentive, the early acquisition, community involvement, the combined temporary skills and ability to center level adversary support, and second business case analysis, multiple mutual trust and shared risk, the flexible to retain the partnership with the scope, balance, workload, independent review and oversight, enforcement, partnership, decision, and requirements of holy coordination with all stakeholders, clearly to document objectives, process, integrate integration across the partnership core to the DSORL earlier 50-50 respective thoroughly technical data available as required investment of the continuous USB and transportation full open communication. All right, the 2003 Government Accounting Office finds that they have stood at the test of the time and are as valid as now as they were 6 years ago. Those data have taken and provided with a rich description of the success characteristics of the good partnership and are actually equally valid within beyond maintenance. There are a myriad of the interest findings will be embedded with the consolidated description of the success characteristics of the good partnership, in particular compelling with the consideration and implementing of the partnerships in contact with the product support business model. Long-term committed with the relationships executed with the flexibility integrated across the organizational boundaries with the complementary skill set and abilities we both essentially possible. Shared partnership vision and objectives with the right metrics and incentive-driven alignment with they are exclusively effective when they supported with a clear delineation of the complementary roles and responsibility, full coordination with all the stakeholders, supported in transparency, open and the communication flexibility to change the partnership scope and essential as ingredient to success. Clear documented objectives support alignment of the fuel success for the partnership that can be achieved through incentive drive desired outcomes and supported by the sound economic analysis. 2. Establish policy training and expanding partnership beyond the maintenance, driving standards and across the surface to promote proactive establishing single source repair capability. To meet its goal, the Department of Defense should create a partnership guidebook using a data collected with the partnership across the sustaining competency must be incorporated with the best practices and successful characteristics developed at the depot, arsenal, ammunition plant level as a benchmark. Collaborate with the Defensive Acquisition University to update training and the curriculum to expand the concept of the partnership beyond the maintenance. Further, than policy should be established to promote the use of the supply chain partnership early in the program life cycle planning and to leverage the government and industry capabilities to establish a single authority source of the depot repair for the programs. This course of repair is then expanded only as throughout requirements dictated. There is nothing that restricts an application partnership of the maintenance arena, even if the specific statutory authority is not provided for the given situation. The government is inherently authority to conduct the business in a reasonable manner, making it using the government's resources, the collaboration with the industry, with the work share agreements as an example for the using both public and private sector factors or facilities employees to perform the work of the public sectors to leverage expertise and optimize product support is reasonable. Even if a specific statutory authority is not provided for a given situation, government has an inherent authority to conduct its business as a reasonable manner. A recent study of the Office of Secretary of War's reported in 1999 that 99 of 348 depot maintenance partnerships demonstrated with the explicit product support performance improvement. Analysis of the narratives associated with these improvements indicated that the improvement that were related with the support. Supply support partners, the material technical data information system and testing, training of the technical assistance, transportation, packaging, engineering and analysis, environmental management, quality support, and logistics services, material movement. And while these areas are also enabled maintenance, these reports use them as example of the product support beyond maintenance. Analysis service provided with the weapon system data shows the strategies involving partnering with the industry yielded 8% higher than sustained readiness than the pure organic approach. They also yielded 10% higher sustained cost management as shown in Figure 15, Appendix A. Provides deeper explanation of the analytical details behind the quantified benefits, however, the pursuit of the industrial integration on the large scale presents the real and fundamental change of the Department of Defense. Industrial partnership yield better readiness improvement of the cost of management integration, sustainable readiness improvement a year and an average year over year to readiness change, overall readiness as the green and the red, the blue and the green are industrial capabilities and partnerships, organic and capabilities, also with the sustained management and average year-to-year cost overall. The strategy will not deliver unless the whole community, including both the government and the industry, is able to make the necessary shift behavior of the organization, business, and process. However, the private industry has more than enabled the development and implementation of the new practices. Viva, the partner private industry, has been instrumental in directly assisting the incorporation of the best practices into the public facility. The Department of Defense has an impact that has at the depots, with the example of the Lean Six Sigma impact with Letter Kenny or lead Viva the HMM-WWW recap partnership between the Department of Logistics and lead and the AM General. The GE driven continuous improvement activities in Jacksonville and the emergent approach is embedded with the Joint Strike Fighter. Adoption of partnership approach with the broader scope of necessarily providing the impedance cross-verticalization best practice between the industry and the organic base. At the same time, the three existing considerable core competencies in the government community, particularly in human capital and infrastructure, which means there should be cross-fertilization from the organic base to the industry. DOD therefore must be established policy training to expand partnership with the beyond maintenance driving the standarding across the service of promoting the proactive establishment of single source repair capability in early in the program's life. Proposed modifications of Title 10 to enable the maximum implementation of the industrial integration. The Department of Defense must recognize different objective drivers applied to the industry and the government. The primary driver of the government inherently those of the mission accomplished the compliance with the industry is accountability at the bottom of the line. Does not meet the goals. The goals cannot be aligned, as have been seen at the depots and the common ground can be found with the inherited with the tensions associated with the divergent drivers can be driven by more optimal outcomes. A rethink of the nature and partnership includes the statutory requirements issues which may impede the effective and affordable implementation of the warfighter base of the product supported strategy, more consistent with the approach of the final rules incentive of the supporting of organic and commercial organization of equal footing will inevitably lead to more predictable results. Revised or new statutory requirements should be due three things. Proposed a strategy for enabling, requiring, monitoring the ability of the Department of Defense supply chain off the industrial activity to produce the performance driving the outcomes of the material readiness of the goals with respect to availability, reliability, total ownership, and the repair of the cycle time. Enabling industry and invest the Department of Defense, industrial, other product and support activities supporting a legislative change to modify the government ownership of the requirement of the depot, other support equipment, and the facilities used in the support of the core capabilities. Establish reporting construction into stimulating the financial aid of the reporting, the equivalency and the compare between the industry and the government that requires the cost transparency to the greatest extent most possible while respecting the need for the protecting competition-sensitive information. If the competition and the partnership can eliminate unnecessary duplicative capabilities and increase efficiency, the recommendation provides the organic base with the same opportunities available in the industry. The supply chain operational strategy recommendation connect the platform product support strategies to enterprise the supply chain approach that products the best value across the Department of Defense components. There are three phases of Department of Defense product life cycle: the requirements, acquisition, and sustainment. They are also supported by the planning of the programming and the budget execution. PPB process, while looking for the operation and standards costs, saving opportunities, sustainment, and large target since current year expensive, but the expense of encompasses 60 to 75% of the life of the cycle of support costs. The majority of the cost is enveloped in the supply chain. The supply chain is a network elaborated, the components integrated with the segments of which where any element down to the basic raw material impacts the material readiness. Warfighters, depending on all repair parts and raw materials, equipment, and consumable supplies, warehouse, transportation aspects, its manufacturing facilities, and service elements in the supply chain to carry out their mission. The Department of Defense supply chain practitioners under this and often make an Herculean efforts to execute their perceived role in the supply without an end-to-end perspective. They cannot tell where the efforts of the contributing to make the entire product of the support and supply chain the more effective. They should know how they impact the order fulfillment cycle time and perfect order fulfillment and supply chain management costs, because these metrics fully speed, reliable, cost, and efficiency have direct impact on the readiness. From a program perspective, the supply chain has the direct impact on the total cost readiness of the weapon system. The better the program manager can understand the influence of the supply chain, more likely as he has achieved the weapon system performance object. The managing and the balancing of the supply chain requires the performance manager or the project manager to know how the supply chain elements plan to the source and make and maintain, deliver, and return to interact, and then make to inform the trade elements. Between these elements, the supply chain reference the model that provides the product support managers. The tool consistently measures supply chain train attributes to the performance and conduct the cause analysis benchmark against the other system to determine the realistic products program expectation potential best practice. Once the weapon system required the outcomes that are established, the product support manager can use the reference model for the tiered metrics of the structure to determine the weapon system supply chain requirements. The supply chain operational strategy must be in more than just architecture. The idea is that it is not enabled as an enterprise to approach the product support is recognized by the program support assessment team and guiding with the principal enterprise means an enterprise. It meeting the guide of the principal of the Department of Defense, capture every opportunity for the joint economy and reduce unnecessary redundancy. Build the capital bill with a good enterprise with the decisions. Enforce consistent product support processes and infrastructure. Currently, there is no signal entity that has a responsibility for or can have effective management of the complex of the end-to-end DOD supply chain. These implements guidelines for the base of the supply chain operational strategy. These strategies provide both the framework standard for the performance of the drive joint and the cross-program efficiency of the data connection. Analysis continually reinforce the ongoing decision-making of the supply chain operational strategy. Also provides the best practice metric processes, enable the support of the enterprise, the stakeholders, the day-to-day sustainment and execution. The Department of Defense supply chain management linkage to product support is coordinated with the government and commercial processes, planning the source of maintaining, delivering, and returning resources required to ensure the warfighters' equipment are ready to accomplish the mission and depiction of their. This is shown in Figure 516. The supply chain architecture provides the structure for the converging material into the warfighter, such as the outside shows the raw materials and requirements of the Department of the Joint Supply Chain for the warfighter capability in between the planning of the process and through the execution process, source and make and maintain, return and delivery process between the raw materials and the warfighting capability. Defense supply chain management poses significant challenges that focus on an individual weapon system. The supplies networks would likely to follow the product support programs they serve as be large, structured around the weapon system platforms. Funding and the supplies reports is often budgeted and managed within the platforms with limited visibility across the program, across the services effectiveness that would result in the leveraging of a common supply base of the transportation, distribution, infrastructure, maintenance, and infrastructure. While some improvements have been made by the Department of Logistics and Transcom in aligning with the supply base of the defensive distribution transportation networks, this is also significant work to be done in reducing overall system and inventory optimization time to be taken for the system standards to get the parts they need. The defensive supply chain must also align common process materials resources to develop better performance at lower cost. Global sourcing distribution must be considered to meet today's supply chain challenges. Commercial best in class provided will provide benchmarks for the help to shape the Department of Defense standards, the speed, reliability, efficiency of all supply chain processes, metrics, measures, on how the Department of Defense is performing and provided with the basis for the targeting. Continue with the improvements over time, linking in the resource, material, information processes, deliver outcomes the warfighter needs, the resource, the developing implementation for using operational strategy and configuration of the supply chain employment or in elements. The supply chain operational strategy and outline is a chapter addressing the critical changes identified with the program support assessment team, discover process, the weapon system analysis. The Department of Defense has the efforts underway to improve the supply chain process, roles, and responsibility, but if there's still to be done with the line incentive metrics and processes to enforce the consequences for the poor performance. In addition, with the IT tools does not support integrated supply chain decision for a result of the poor visibility across the program support services. The supply chain operational strategy provides with the framework with a go-to resource tool enabling implementation supply chain best practices across the Department of Defense industry that are aligned for the effective product support. Recommended mission key task: installation of the joint supply chain architectural department and service and private industry suppliers. Establish common enterprise information architectural visibility. eHub provide consistently synchronizing services between the supply chain partnership, the developing and managing supply management body or SCM book. Institutionalize the joint supply chain architecture across the Department of Service and private industry suppliers. The implementation of the recommendation they accomplished through the rollout application of the ADUSD SC1 joint supply chain architecture reference model. The joint supply chain architecture provides the structure for the product of the support to manage and understand the influence of the supply chain elements that impact the product with the support. The figure 17 shows the more detail of the joint supply chain architecture model with a focus on the three levels of performance metrics: supply chain management, cost, and order fulfillment cycle time, and for perfect order and fulfillment, and to improve the material readiness through efficiency, speed, and reliability. Alright, figure 17 shows the joint supply chain architecture provides with a hierarchy process titled to the common high levels. Demand signs from the warfighter requisition maintenance requirements, replenishing action and return request, and goes into the source maintainer report and delivering with the return and with the returns in the service and the deliver, while the supply chain overview takes over the top level performance and play end to end the supply with with also the contended support source, maintain a repair, deliver, and return process to the outcomes of speed, reliability, and efficiency, material readiness. Derived from the supply chain operation reference material model, the standard of the commercial supply chain management, the joint support chain architecture reflects the unique attribute of the defense supply of the serve the base and identifying the performance configuration opportunity for the remaining improve the material readiness supply chain efficiency of the joint support chain architecture looks across organizational funding of the boundary the purpose of improving the Department of Defense supply chain effectiveness and efficiency by employing an enterprise-wide end-to-end perspective to achieve the improve the material readiness at best value. The joint supply chain architecture is not a software application. It is a framework for the implementation and is focused on deriving the process of improvement enabled to inform the supply chain decision making, the facilitating communication unity for the effort across the Department of Defense supply chain enterprise. The joint supply chain architecture is a fairly new initiative that will be enhanced over time. The details of the joint supply chain architecture specifically identifies the best practice metrics and enables the key stakeholders of the Department of Defense supply chain. Fundamental improvement to these stakeholders in balance between the supply and demand, the quantity and the quality of the relationship required to achieve the balance of the joint supply chain architecture. Provide the common language, the metrics of the supply, such as demand and plan accuracy, that allows the measurement of these collaborative relationships outcomes. It also provided the foundation of performance benchmarks and across the surface of the industry and the joint supply chain to include benchmarking against the other weapons. This allows the identification of the Department of Defense best practices to provide the framework for exploring and evaluating supply chain configuration operations or options. To establish a common enterprise information architecture visibility eHub to provide the consistent with a synchronizing services between the supply chain participation viable common enterprise information architecture that enable the seamless instantaneous flow information cross from the service and their suppliers needed for the end-to-end supply chain for the retail, for the wholesale, from the warfight to the supplier. The architecture of the joint supply chain architecture management, Aviva, the open style. So open system architecture that captures and associates the partnership examples are already being used for the real-time collaborative and integrated supply chain application for the line side replenishing outbound logistic constraint management. Examples have been demonstrated benefit as such as only one at the interface of the demand standard information exchange methods, reduce and service specific with the integration issues, and increase security information associate assurances, support service-oriented architecture, and scalability, upgradable and interchangeable. Currently, service as specific enterprise resource planning of the system discreetly manages the supply chain applications such as repair, line replenishment, outbound logistics, depot management. The next step is to combine the service and the agency supply chain management, the tools that open the system architecture. As an example, which shown in the figure 18, to create the Department of Defense sustaining supply chain visibility, improve across the service supply chain uses, and promote the enterprise will supply the chain optimization. Figure 18, eHub combines the supply chain information for the servicing of the supporting agency to create the operating picture. This shows the maintenance domain as a service-oriented architecture going into assets allocated with the repair, planning and mission park permitting and logistic planning in an eHub operational system. The maintenance domain goes to the operational domain with the mission requirements and service-oriented architecture to supply distribution domain, and then back to the maintenance allocation. Alright, the development and management of supply chain management book of knowledge, structure to join supply chain architecture of the supply chain management body of the knowledge is used to help and standardize and improve the training and skill development for the supply chain competency, the best practices as they relate to the product support. The supply chain body of the knowledge book process is based on meaning and it describes the work being accomplished in the process that is approached and consistent with the management and standards in ISO 9000 and the DOD extended the project management body of the knowledge, and all of which is described in the process in terms of the input, documents, plans, the design, tools, techniques, mechanisms applied in the inputs, outputs, and documents and products and etc. The supply chain management body knowledge book should be detailed repository institution for the 5 basic process groups as they are typically almost all supply chains, government and commercial, as are referenced in the Department of Defense 4141R, the DOD supply chain material management regulations, plan source making, maintaining, delivering, and return. A government, industry, nonprofit association, AI, and NDI, SCC is the best way for forwarding, developing the Department of Defense supply chain management knowledge book. The primary objective is to serve the form of the exchange of views and information directly related to the supply chain planning of the sourcing, manufacturing, maintaining, delivering, and returning process. The industrial base has the will and continue to provide implementation infrastructure scale for the modern and ready defense force. The project support business model seeks to capitalize the tremendous assets through the more industrial collaboration partnership between the organic and commercial entities, moving more signal defense industry base that requires the more information sharing, common focus, the consistent metrics to measure the progress, in decision of the supply chain operational strategy developed in the standard Lexion benchmarking decision metrics, and proposed information sharing, constructing the need to manage this integrated industrial base through a broad end-to-end Department of Defense supply chain. Chapter 5. Recommended process and enabler implementing the product support business model.